Hashtag psychotherapy unfogged with Mark Fielding.
Hello, welcome to Series 4, Episode 18 of Hashtag Psychotherapy Unfold. As you know, I'm Mark Fielding, psychotherapist and relationship counsellor, and your host. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing Jack McClean, the visionary behind Prepare Like a Pro, with an unwavering dedication to the fitness industry throughout his career. His passion lies in empowering individuals for high performance achievements, while embracing the journey towards excellence. Embarking on his fitness journey as a swimming teacher for adults during high school, he soon found his calling. After obtaining his personal training certificate from the Australian Institute of Personal Trainers, he was ignited by the progress and motivation of his clients, propelling them towards self-improvement. His journey extended to coaching athletes as part of the Caulfield Grammarians football team's pre-season program, not only refining their performance, but also curbing injury risks. His fascination with competitive CrossFit enriched him with profound lessons in pushing boundaries and honing gymnastic and Olympic weightlifting skills. 5 enriching years working for the Box Hill Hawks Hawthorn football clubs amalgamated his strength and conditioning expertise. His current role as the Melbourne Football Club strength and rehabilitation coach propels him forward with new learnings and insights. At Prepare Like a Pro, his philosophy encompasses the quintessence of high performance involving top-tier coaching and programming for optimal athletic development. I had a look at your quite a CV, Jack. You've done a lot, haven't you?
Thank you.
Over the years. I always kick
I've
off.
tried.
I always kick off by just asking our guests around what personal experiences led them into the field. How did you get into this field?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Actually, it's a good one to reflect on. But I reckon it's something that I've always been, gravitated towards movement. As a kid, just loved playing sport. But also, I think mother's a Chinese herbalist, acupuncturist. Dad was his own painter, so both ran their own businesses. I had some health issues with having pretty poor asthma, where at times I had to, spend some nights in hospitals or a few days. At times it got pretty bad.
Yeah.
But through Tai Chi, swimming, changing my diet and taking Chinese herbs, I had quite a profound effect. Where Western medicine wasn't quite getting the same outcome, and grew out of it by the age of 12. So I think that probably had a pretty big influence on me, that experience. And then from there, I've always, enjoyed the feeling of having, providing other people value and sort of having a role with their dreams and their goals as well. And as a fitness coach, wherever, no matter what population you work with, someone generally has something that they want to get better at and that they're pretty motivated. So try to find that if they're not sure what it is. And then, create a plan with that person on how we're going to get there. And always having that sort of team work aspect. And that's where team sport has been quite a good fit for me, where everyone at the club, both staff and players and administration, are all there for the same sort of purpose and same goal. So that's quite motivating and a great place to wake up in the morning and go to work. But yeah, I think that's probably where it stemmed from. So a bit of a life experience in what life threw at me in my journey. And then I enjoyed teaching people skills that I've learned along my journey and sharing that with others.
Yeah, and really interesting. Yeah, I guess from having asthma and being fairly debilitated, really. I guess hospital inpatient stays, and then Western medicine not really helping, and then looking for other kind of ways of healing. Just to pick out one of those, the Tai Chi, is that something that you still do? Is that something you incorporate? Do you incorporate some of these kind of Eastern practices into your coaching?
I think so. I think just in terms of I don't deliberately. So Tai Chi, I don't take the footballers through Tai Chi practice. Yeah. From that point of view, but I think seeing it as myself as a teacher at times and having that hat on, not always as a where you're trying to understand where the other person's coming from and meeting them in the middle.
Yeah.
I think that can have that sort of effect. But I think going back to the question in terms of applying, I guess being mindful with your communication, being mindful with the energy you're bringing to your sessions, so that mindfulness aspect as well. But the Tai Chi was more or less just a breathing routine that I do every morning. And Qigong was another thing that we played with. But my mum would just wanted to look outside the box because being on antibiotics and the puffer for the rest of your life, which is what I was told, wasn't something she was comfortable with. And then having these episodes where we'll have to come back to the hospital and spend the night there. So thankful that she did sort of get creative, and then it actually shaped her career. She ended up being so inspired by the practices and methods that she's now been in Chinese medicine. So she would have started that at around 40, and then she's been doing that for the rest of her career, helping others with their health issues. So yeah, I think it's something that maybe at a later stage, thankfully now I'm healthy and functioning, that I'm not relying on anything from a health point of view. But certainly I'll tap into, like if we're on holidays, I love doing yoga. I love tapping in. If there's stressful periods of my life, I'll always do a mindfulness routine or meditation, or just some quiet practice, or just even just walking the dog. So I think there's elements where I definitely tap into it from a mental health point of view. Physically, I have that routine, that the herbs, the swimming. I still do swimming, but from time to time. But yeah, the herbs and the diet, which was pretty much low sugar diet. That's pretty straightforward. No need to follow quite something.
Yeah, and I guess really holistic. I mean, mindfulness is something that I talk about a lot on the show. I meditate, I use mindfulness, and I don't know, it's such an easy thing to do, really, isn't it? You can be out in nature, you can just, click into mindfulness, calms the whole nervous system down. I mean, it's such a good practice. I mean, I wanted to kind of move on. Could you tell us a little bit about your program? I mean, how do you work with elite athletes? What does your program look like? I mean, how do you what do you bring in? I mean, what does it look like when you're working with these kind of elite athletes?
Is this in terms of my role at Melbourne Football Club, Mark?
Yeah,
or
yeah. Well, both really. I mean, I guess I mean, it's your whole career really. You've done this, but I mean, we could maybe focus on Melbourne Football Club. I mean, how do you motivate, the players? I mean, what is your program? What do you do? I guess.
Yeah. So my role at the club is to work with the injured athletes and help them return to play. So I work very closely with the medical team. We're looking at a couple of sports doctors. We've got a sports dietitian, physiotherapist. There's one specifically that I work with, Katie, who I work with really closely. She has the same role as myself. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. She's a physiotherapist, so we work really closely with the injured athletes. We've also got a sports psychologist, so working closely with him as well, especially for long-term injured athletes, but even for your short-term returning back to performance and getting back into their routine. So it's quite a strong team. We've got sports scientists, performance managers, head of strength and power, and a weight coach. So it's quite a collaborative program, and I definitely lean on all those expertise to make sure that the programs they're maximising each day for the athletes. The program's really thought out. But yeah, essentially my role, as soon as an athlete takes a hamstring strain, they get injured on the weekend, straight away we'll work with them, build out a plan. From a motivation point of view, it's obviously a bit of a down period for them, so they can, when they're still accepting the fact that they're injured and they're not playing, especially at this point of the year where it's finals, it's quite disheartening for the athlete, so motivation is really important. So my role is understanding the athlete, how to work, which Steve, our sports psychologist, can help with, what makes them tick, but also making sure they're really clear on the markers. We're quite objective, so we have clear markers for the athlete to achieve rather than being time-based. We're quite criteria-based. So you might have heard in the media or someone else has told them something's going to be a 12-week injury, but we go back to the markers and say, no, it doesn't necessarily have to take 12 weeks. Let's just focus on this next step, which is basically small goal setting. Let's work on building this capacity. Once we tick this box, then we move on to the next stage. You might get that work done in 9 weeks and be available. So yeah, rather than going to time, I think it works quite well from a motivation point of view is having objective markers that the athlete can sort of work to, and that builds momentum, builds confidence, and hopefully gets to the point where they're actually physically in better shape than they were pre-injury. So going into that first game, they feel confident and they're ready to not only play but actually perform.
I mean, I guess there must be a strong mental health component. Yeah, I guess I hear about you. There's real team working and there's a sports psychologist. But goodness, I mean, during the season, if a player gets injured, I mean, I guess every player is going to react to that differently. But it must be a really down moment for them. I mean, looking at the injury and then looking at a period of rehabilitation and not being able to play. I mean, that players must be pretty down, right? Depending on the kind of injury they get. I mean, you have to motivate them. Is that difficult sometimes, Jack? I mean, I guess everyone's going to react to that differently, probably player wise, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's my first year in the role. And it
Yeah,
is interesting. The previous roles that I had were more where you're working with the main group and ensuring they're strong and fit and
yeah,
performing. Um, so in this mindset, you're really in this role. It's quite interesting. It's almost like a revolving door. One player leaves in a good
yeah,
mood, and they're back, and then another player comes in, and you sort of got to ride the bumps of, you're always working with those that, yeah, it's a bit of an up and down sort of role. But I think I quite like it from that one-on-one point of view. Um, you know, the athlete, the environment itself, because we're quite a successful club at the moment, we're in a premiership window, is very motivating. So players want to
yeah,
come back as quickly as possible and are willing to do whatever it takes
yeah,
to ensure they're going to get back. So the motivation, although it is early stage when they're sort of accepting the fact that they're injured, I think in this environment, it's quite easy for them to find that motivation. It's sort of around them the whole time in the environment. They've got really good leadership, great leaders like Max Thorne has gone through a couple of ACL injuries. He's our captain, so he's got great empathy for those players that are going through rehabilitation. So I think that really helps where there's plenty of support for those who are injured and going through tough, and not just the staff, but also players that have been through it as well. So it's sense, I think, for the players to be able to, I guess, just focus on what's in front of them, be present and focus on those markers and putting in the work. That's what's going to allow them to get back to what they love doing.
I mean, do they ever want to come back earlier? I mean, do you ever get into conflict? I mean, are there times when they feel fit and they're saying to you, "Yeah, Jack, I'm ready to go back," but professionally, you don't think they are?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah,
Yeah, I thought
absolutely.
you might
Yeah,
say that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, all the time, which as you'd expect. I would say a lot of the time those probably decisions are above me. They would probably more come down to my boss, who's been in my role at another club for 5 years. He's been in the industry for over a decade, so he's got a lot of experience. So he would, if there is areas where there's that conflict or they're just voicing rather than think that the markers that we've set in place is relevant to them or whatever their questions are, and they're challenging the program. Um, he he would sort of step into that situation, just make sure the athlete understands where we're coming from, understands
yeah,
why these markers are in place. That it's ultimately to build insurance or act like a vaccine for them, so they're not going to get re-injured. There's nothing worse than coming back to play and then doing that injury again,
yeah, yeah,
having to start from square one. But also, it's also making sure that they've got adequate time training with the main group, because we don't want them just coming back into training, doing one training session with the main group and then playing, because that's not going to set them up to succeed either. I'm setting it at the highest level, make sure that they're ready to not just play, but actually perform their role and help the team succeed. So,
You okay?
to tell. But yes, I think going because everyone's the players are selfless and wanting the team to be their
Yeah,
absolute best. If you bring it back to team performance and making sure that they're ready, sometimes that means that they need to stick to the program, stick to hitting those markers to ensure that in tip-top shape to perform. But there's also times where we with the athlete will be right, and they will. If we roughly say you'll get these markers done in 6 to 8 weeks, and they say, "Oh, I'll do it in 5," and there's
yeah,
times where they do, and we're not going to hold them back. If that's where it's quite a good thing. It's nice to have that be that surprise and have those athletes go against the norm, buck the trend, and do achieve the work, and then suddenly they've hit all their markers and they're back playing like they said. So it's almost kind of act in a good way where they almost see it as a challenge and it motivates them to prove wrong. And that goes back to what I was saying before, where you just got to understand the beast, I guess, and everyone's a little bit different.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Them motivate them to be there to train like this. And yeah, I'll just do one sec, Mark.
Okay, no worries. I mean, when players come back, I mean, if they have a bad injury, so so you'll help them rehabilitate. They'll be ready to get playing again. I'm guessing some of them have a bit of anxiety around getting injured again. Do they? I mean, if it's a bad injury, they start playing. That's probably a kind of mental component. Is there sometimes they're worried about stretching themselves, maybe?
Yeah. I think there'd have to be nearly every injury. I think there'd be an element of, but certainly the contact injuries like broken leg or significant knee injuries, where there's that contact layer and then there's that. I guess particularly the last time they did that, significantly it's trauma that they experienced. So whether it's significant pain or what they saw or how they felt, the whole experience is pretty vivid. So yeah, I think repetition can really help. So from them, but also the things they can do behind the scenes with the sports psychologist in terms of visualization tools. But ultimately, you're just going to have to prepare that athlete to be faced in those circumstances in probably a more controlled situation, and then get them positioned for that, and then they start to feel more familiar. The anxiety starts to come down, and then progress that to a point where they're doing their match intensity or even above match intensity. And that you want to make sure that's quite deliberate. The athletes along for the ride, or when we progress those football component drills, or if it's a hamstring injury, and the way they did their hamstring was sprinting, and now you're suddenly getting to sprint for the first time since they did it 3 weeks ago. Naturally, there's going to be anxiety, and we know with sprinting, we're actually a little bit quite relaxed to move and hit those optimal shapes and running. Otherwise, we're tense, we're not going to move as well, and the muscles the hamstring is under more strain. So we know we need to try and sort of settle that anxiety before giving athletes. Same thing with probably the contact as well, no doubt. If the body's tense and going into it with a bit out bench, probably at a higher risk. Whereas if you're attacking that contact as you normally would, you're probably in a better spot. So yeah, I think bring that anxiety down, giving them the confidence that they're ready to be able to take that drill, and then building out a plan that they've got with as well. So if they feel like today's not the day to sprint, then listening to that. And having the athlete as part of that collaboration piece as well. What are the things that they're, because that you don't know what they're thinking. So asking them, what are your most, what's one thing that's holding you back from playing? If we we're going to play this weekend, would you feel up for it? And some of them might say, yep, I'm ready. And therefore we just need to make sure that we build that insurance, build those vaccines by protecting them, because the motivation aspect, the anxiety aspect for those players isn't the case. We just need to hit our physical markers. But then for the ones that are hitting all their physical markers, but mentally they just don't feel confident and ready yet, and we need to more focus on the building up and sending that anxiety and making helping them feel like they're prepared, that they're ready to play.
Yeah, I mean, looking at, I mean, it must be so individual, right? Because I mean, every player that comes to you, they come to you, they got their, I mean, they're all elite athletes, of course, but they come with their own personal histories, and maybe some of them have a history of mental health, and when I hear you say trauma, I think, goodness me, I mean, that is the right word. If a player breaks their leg, I mean, goodness me, that's massive, isn't it? I mean, even a torn hamstring for an elite athlete, it's massive, isn't it? I mean, in terms of, I mean, if a player breaks their leg, Jack, I mean, what's the rehabilitation for that? I mean, that must take ages. It must take a long time for them to be back.
Yeah, it can take. We had a player at Hawthorn, happened at one of the last years. It was a couple of weeks ago, pre-season. They'd just done the whole pre-season without playing, and they broke their leg in training. It was a clash of legs, shin bones, and the full-on journey, even just to get back to jogging, was looking at a hell of a lot of work. heavily involved in the rehab role at that point. I was looking after the young players with their athletic development. But I know working closely with the rehab coach, the work that went into both mental and the physical side to get back to playing, was a lot. And that was someone who was a pretty hard worker as well. So following the work wasn't an issue, but just the fact of that, how that injury happened.
Yeah.
But
I
they're
guess,
back playing now. So using tools to, if there's any coaches that have gone, like luckily there was an assistant coach that went through a similar experience where he broke his leg and returned back to playing for a couple of years before retiring. So having those reference points, having those people at the club that you can lean on and have good relationships with players. If there's any other players that have gone through a similar injury, reach out to them. And if you haven't got anyone internally, then reach out to other clubs and other people that have gone through it, so they can sort of share their experiences, what they're going through, the ups and downs. I think that helps.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, all of the support around, but I guess the rehabilitation, it's so one-to-one. I mean, it must be. I mean, looking at a player that's used to being around the team, and it's a team sport, and then they're in rehabilitation one-to-one. That must be kind of lonely for them, really. It's really different, isn't it? Yeah.
We try to integrate them as best we can, whether it be environments, things like team meetings, still staying engaged in team meetings, still going to in the gym, we break the group up into thirds, so make sure they're where we can, and it works with their schedule, because sometimes they have a lot of external experts that we see, or appointments with surgeons and things like that, where we need checkups, where of course we adjust their schedule, but where we can, we try and integrate them in the group as best we can. So the days that the main group are training, we prioritise to fit the rehab in on those days, so they're still around their teammates. But naturally, just because of especially when you're in season, which we are now, the content during the week is more recovery based and then gearing up for a game, where when you're in rehab, you're more in that pre-season mode where you're getting 3 to 4 training sessions a week. So there is a long time with me and the athlete, which keeps me fit because I just jump in with them along the way.
But in terms of, I mean, obviously you bring, all of your experience and all of your skills to rehabilitating the athlete. But I mean, in terms of using emotional intelligence and empathy, because you must really have to use a lot of that as well, because I guess you've got to establish a really good relationship with every single player that comes in, really. So I guess you're doing both, aren't you? You're doing the physical, but there must be a lot of kind of mental stuff that you're doing with these players as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's an element of having. I bring it back to support and stretch. So there's periods of the role where someone will need me to support them that day, and I'll tap into that. There'll be other days where they'll need to be stretched and challenged, and I'll tap into that. But there's also a lot of people around me that they're, we have the sports psych, like I talked about, but we also have player welfare. So Reece Conker, who's an ex-player, so he's got a great understanding of what it's like to be an AFL player. He played I think he retired 2 years ago. And he's got great emotional intelligence as well. So he's in a great position to be able to support those that are going through hard times, whether it be injuries or just poor form or whatever it might be, not getting selected in the senior side, or just simply just going through some things outside of footy. He's very, very good at sort of giving the players a bit of a cuddle, whether it be an emotional cuddle or physical cuddle, and helping them along. The players itself, the medical team. But there's certainly times where if it's just one-on-one, of course, then I'll be that guy and help and step up in that, not just focus on the physical, but also just tap into what's keeping you busy outside of football, because everyone around them playing and that's their purpose, and suddenly their purpose has been ripped away from them.
Yeah, totally.
So if you can engage in a good book or a Netflix series or some sort of hobby or study for the longer termers, then I think that can be quite helpful as well. A nice distraction, just something else to focus on. That can be quite handy.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I guess they have to focus on other stuff, but I mean, I think of someone that, in the middle of the season, I mean, goodness me, I mean, it must impact some of these players so much. 1 minute they're moving forwards and they're playing, they're doing what they love, and then the next minute, they're at home, they're watching a Netflix box set or something. I mean, depending on the player, I mean, some of them, it must be massively difficult for them to, well, I guess they push forward because, they're wanting to play again. But for some of them, the trauma of it must be massive. Is it difficult to motivate some of the players? I mean, so if the players had a really bad injury, are they always motivated, or do you have to do a lot of motivation? Because I guess some of them get down, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they probably put on a bit of a proud face when they're at the club,
Okay.
or probably a happy face, or the ones I wouldn't necessarily say doing the work is the problem. It's probably just doing the work at the level. Probably needs an element of reminding at times, or but for some, it might also just be their first year in the system, so they're learning the ropes and they're still learning off the senior players, and then now they're in rehab, which you don't get as much of that feedback from
Yeah.
the senior players. So that's where it can be our role to help them on lifestyle habits, training habits, and those sort of things. But generally, from a motivational point of view, when they're at the session and they're moving, I think they're pretty good. It's probably more just when you're not at the club
Yeah.
is and you're not seeing them is probably where there's more of a change. But I mean, that's only an assumption, but only because their purpose isn't there. So you're naturally probably not going to do as much quality recovery sessions. Maybe perhaps the food slips, so we make sure with sports dietitian we're monitoring, that they're still eating well, fueling their training, that their body composition isn't changing too much. Yeah, because naturally just wanting comfort food. So that's where it's probably the stuff away from the club that there's probably bigger changes from an actions point of view. But when they're at the club, due to the environment and the culture, I feel like it's not a big or a big focus of mine is motivation. That's something that's generally there. You might just need to be because it's not football, so it's not the things that they necessarily love doing. Like they love playing football, they don't love lifting weights, doing conditioning, doing cross training, those sort of things. So it's just going back to how is this going to help them play football at the highest level and return back to what they do love. So that's where connecting the dots is really important. They're not on the bike because we're trying to improve their bike capacity. They're on the bike because we want to try and improve their ability to repeat high intensity positions, which is really important for their specific role as maybe a speed forward, for example. So connecting back to the game, I think is really important when they're not playing, so then they can understand, okay, this is gonna help me and my football.
Yeah. I mean, I guess with elite athletes, I hit the motivation maybe is not always that difficult, but I mean, I guess you've got to be, really up and really inspiring and really motivational every day. Is that hard sometimes? Because obviously you have a bad day sometimes, right? You have a bad night's sleep or something. But I guess in your role, as I imagine it to be, you've got to be very motivational, very inspirational. Is it always easy to do that? Some days more easy than others.
Yeah, I think when I was working with general population as a personal trainer, that probably I felt more of an expectation to be that, or maybe because I was a younger coach, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Where now I sort of one, I'm working with more of a motivated population just because of the environment they're in and who they are as well. But I definitely felt that where I was a personal trainer and you need to show up for this person and be sort of their role model, I guess, because of the role I'm at in the football club. Their best role models are the players, in a sense, really, rather than the support staff. So I don't feel that as much in this role, but I do want to bring my best self to every day to maximise their program and their day, because that's what I feel like they deserve. So making sure that I do get some training in at the start of the day, and I've got my, always writing stuff down, the things that I think will be important from a programming point of view or something that might help that player. So that real intentional thinking, I think, is important. The collaboration piece, because I'm new to the role as well, learning off all my peers that have got a lot of experience in the industry, making sure that their thoughts and philosophies are going into the programming. So asking lots of questions, I think, is really important. That's probably more my mindset is, and from an energy point of view, it's probably focusing on making sure that the program is, the best it possibly can to maximise each day. But from a energy point of view or motivation, it's quite easy for me to be motivated because I worked a long time to get to this role. It's something that I love doing, and it's something that I'm passionate about. So that aspect comes quite naturally, the motivational piece internally for me, because I enjoy what I'm doing. Not saying there's days where, like you said, with my son at the moment, he's been quite sick for a few weeks, so he's got an earache. He's not sleeping very well. So my wife and I are definitely having some, and we've also got an 11-month baby as well. So if sleep isn't something that's great, where you definitely feel like, I've got to pick myself up today, and maybe it might be an ice bath or a workout that I need to do just to perk myself up. To make sure that you're still present and your best self, I guess, for the players. But also sometimes it's just days where I'm just like, I'm probably not as sharp as own up to it. I'm just bit of a rough night's sleep last night, and I don't think the players are reliant on me for their energy. So it's not something I can be open and honest with.
Yeah, I mean, you seem fairly inspirational as a person, really. I mean, I guess that comes fairly easy to you, really. I mean, you're kind of naturally like that. Would you?
I think so.
You come over,
definitely. I like to be optimistic and positive in the way that I sort of look at things, and bring energy to I guess my day, and have that. I think that purpose is the key. So living in your purpose, I think it just allows that energy to flow. And then also, I love being. I've got a greyhound kelpie dog. I feel like I'm a bit of that mix. Like, I can easily be a kelpie and be high energy, but then I love being a greyhound or a cat and just be a couch potato as well, and just restore that energy and recharge the batteries, which I think is an important aspect. And the schedule almost allows that, because we get 2 full days off from where I've still, for staff, that's a lot of planning and a lot of reporting and programming on those days. But I think those 2 days are really important, just to do whatever you need to do as a person to sort of recharge. I think that works quite well as well. The schedule almost allows you to sort of bring energy to those days, because you know that you're going to have your days off every couple of days as well.
Yeah, so you get your reboot time. You okay? I'm not going to keep you much longer, but could I just okay, no problem. But I at the end of the show, I ask all of our guests, what do you do to keep yourself, to sustain good mental health? I mean, what do you do to look after yourself?
I think there's a few things. So I know understanding. So purpose for me is really, really important. So having a clear purpose of what I'm doing, whether that be family time, enjoying that, whether that be business or my role at Melbourne Football Club. So that's really important. I think from an energy point of view, the things that I get a lot of energy from is feeling like I can add value to my workplace as well as my home. Make sure that on that downtime, it's quite intentional. So, like, things that I love to do is like go for a surf, make sure I keep myself physically fit. Looking after my body as well. Like, with playing in the role, I do a lot of football and football drills. So making sure I stay on top of my body and looking after my body from a stretching, mobility point of view. I think those things are important. And then when it's just, the role can have pressure and elements where things don't quite go to plan, and there can be frustration with that. So that's where mental health things are defined. Breathing exercises, I think, can be quite helpful to make sure that that, I guess, you're not letting that sort of just compound and have a compounding effect, but you're sort of focusing on just being present with that stress and thinking and talking about it as well. Like, my wife's very supportive, and she's really good in the space of understanding elite sport, what it brings, but also being in the industry of health and fitness as well. She understands how important it is that we look after ourselves. So I think the feeling of, although you want to be really selfless and help others, I think if you're working in the industry of helping others, you need to make sure you're looking after yourself as number one to be able to really help help others and really be your best for either those you're working for or for your family. So I think having that at the forefront of what works well for you, what is your ideal day and week, month sort of look like, and what are your important little energizers, I guess, along the way that you need as well to keep yourself at your best, which I think is a forever evolving. For me, I think it's something that you just chip away at, and you never get right every day, but you might need a little reminder every so often, like, oh, yep, I need to go for a surf and book one in. I've forgotten to do that for 6 weeks, or go for a walk, or whatever it might be, just to check in and be aware, because that right now in my stage of life, it's definitely a busy time, having 2 kids, running a business, and then working in elite sports. I think you can get caught up. So having that moment of just slowing down and making sure that you're reflecting, I guess, on where you're at.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I guess just pulling one part of that out. I mean, you've got to be in peak performance. You've got to be kind of, in peak condition yourself. And I guess the exercise, it's so good for mental health, isn't it? I mean, the fact you exercise every day, I mean, it's the best thing for mental health. And I guess the surfing as well. You're in nature. It's probably really nice where you surf. So, I mean, that brings in good feelings. I'm kind of conscious of not keeping you too long, because I know you're looking after your son. So listen, we'll finish there, Jack. But I just want to really thank you for coming on the show. And I'll let you know when the show comes out. And it's been really good to meet you.
I appreciate it, Mark. Yeah, really appreciate it. It's been great to chat, and hopefully I could provide some value for your listeners. And yeah, thank you for having me on.
And I just want to thank Jack again for coming on the show. There's a few points where we had to just kind of edit the video and edit the sound recording, where Jack kind of went off and was doing a bit of childcare. But it's so nice of Jack, to come on the show, and what an interesting and inspiring guest. Some of the things he said around purpose, I thought, were really interesting. I didn't really have time to follow up on that, and really kind of takes me back to, the episode with Carlos Vasquez, who talks a lot about, being in your purpose, and, that being really motivational and a real driver, for not only happiness, but, pushing forward in your life. Again, there were so many things that I could have asked Jack. I was going to ask him a little bit about men and mental health. We did touch on mental health in terms of some of the players and the trauma of injury, and wanting to come back from injury, and moving from being in a group situation to one-to-one rehab with Jack. Jack's CV, obviously, I didn't read out on the show, but goodness me, what an impressive CV. I mean, Jack has done an incredible amount, and now working for, top tier Australian rules football team as the rehabilitation coach. Great interview, and Jack kindly offered to perhaps come on again at some point, so we may be able to get Jack back on. So thanks again. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about Are You OK Day? It's Are You OK Day today. And I just want to kind of say that, Are You OK Day is all about checking with mates and family members and just asking whether they're okay. It's an important day in terms of mental health in Australia, and asking family members, friends, colleagues, if they are okay, can obviously sometimes open up really, really, important and connecting conversations. So very, very important day. And I think very important that I mention it today. And also I wanted to mention Joe's film premiere. Joe's film, I Miss You, premieres on the 7th of October. We'll put some links on our social media to the event and how you can get hold of it. I've still not seen it, but I'm very, very excited to see it. It looks like a really, really fantastic project. And as some of our listeners will remember, Joe's films Anxious Me and Anxious Me Too, both won awards in Australia. So really, really excited to see the premiere of I Miss You. Again, we'll have the links on our social media websites. There's a Q&A, I think, after the premiere, where you can talk to the cast, talk to Joe. So, please check that out. We've got another show coming to you on Friday, which is going to be a really, really fantastic show talking around yoga, breathwork, and much, much more. So watch out for that one. And again, just to thank you all for listening. As I always say, probably too repetitively, we wouldn't have a show without you. I mean, our numbers are really, really growing. So thank you for all of our listeners. And again, I would say a lot of people listen and don't subscribe. It helps us massively if you subscribe. Subscribe to the podcast, the audio podcast on whichever platform you listen to. Yeah, and also the YouTube channel, which is getting a lot less hits. I mean, if you want to check out the videos of some of the interviews on season 4, then check out Psychotherapy Unfogged YouTube. And yeah, and any comments, likes, and subscribing again would be very, very much appreciated. Yeah, and as I always say, look after yourselves, look after each other, look after the planet. And I'll see you soon on the next episode.